Hello everybody. Yes, we're good. Hello and welcome to another fabulous Foxton Friday feline friendly puppy participation permitted pizza party paint along. The naming is getting a bit out of hand, let's be honest, but it's fun. I should point out that I haven't decided on any of these names. They have all been decided on by attendees of the pizza party paint-alongs on a Friday. So there we go. Today is a tricky one, cut glass. This has been requested as a paint-along. I don't mind telling you, I know this is going to be a bit of a tricky one, for me too. So it might be going a little bit longer than normal today, maybe more than an hour. I'm going to go through it. I've already got it drawn out. Well, I've basically just drawn out the glass, you know, because I've got those tricky ellipses to deal with as well as tricky values. I'm going to paint the background in first, as before, and then I'm going to start working on the body part of the glass. The idea today is the same as for last week and the week before. Doing a little series on painting glass at the moment. This is the final one, where I'm not going to try and paint all of those little details. I mean, let's face it, we would probably be here for about 6 to 8 hours if I was going to try and do it all. I'm going to try to create the impression of the cut glass that you can see there as economically as possible, painting as little as possible. So yeah, we're just looking for an impression of it, but we want it to look like cut glass. We're not going to let ourselves get away with anything that doesn't look quite there. Okay, we'll see how it goes. Let's just see how it goes. Welcome everybody, thank you for coming. I'm going to switch over to the easel and I will show you what I have laid out at the moment. So all I've done right now is I've just roughed out the glass because I want to make sure that I don't make too many massive drawing errors. So the first thing I did was I decided where the center point of the glass was. And it's actually, you know, the reference photo has a grid on it, obviously. And the center line of the glass is actually just to the right of the central grid line, right, of the panel. This is a 10 by 8 inch ampersand gesso board panel. I have covered it with a very, very thin layer of linseed oil, this stuff here, mixed with a very small amount of solvent, this stuff here. I put it on with this makeup sponge and then I wiped it off with some kitchen roll. So there's almost nothing left on there at all, right? Really, really thin layer. And then I roughed out the glass. So I've put in the ellipses that I hope are somewhere near, like kind of close enough that I'm not going to destroy the form by having terribly painted ellipses. The form of the glass, this bit is pretty easy, the stem, but this bit I've built out of 1, 2, 3, 4 straight lines. So one that goes like that, one that goes like that, one that curves in there, and then another one that comes down to the stem. So that's all I've got laid out at the moment, okay? But let us have a quick look at this reference photo in the fabulous Chroma Magic. Let's have a look at some of these colors. So I've kind of tried to set this up. I've been looking at some photos of, like, you know, painters like Willem Kalf, Dutch Golden Age still life painters. And if you have a look, like all of these colors, I can click around anywhere in here. They're either neutrals or they're really low, generally low chroma orange yellows. There's slight hue differences, but we're mostly in the yellow orange area, right? We're right down the bottom of the value range on the shadow side there. So we are here too on the glass. The highest value is this little highlight here, where basically this app, the Chroma Magic app, is telling me a value 10, which we can't reach in paint. We can't get there in paint, okay? These values, if I try and zoom in on those, See a little bit of the glass close up. You know, these values are really high as well. Look at all that intricacy. I am not going to be painting that. I'm not going to be painting this. All of those little crosses, no. I don't think so. Not on a Friday evening when my tummy is rumbling and I'm waiting for my pizza. So let's see if we can do all of this area here like as a kind of a single value. So I'm looking at this, I want to be looking at it small and I want to be squinting. So I actually have a small version of this up on a screen across the room from me so I can squint and see it really, really small, you know. Talking about, oh, that's not what I want. Where is it? Here we go. Little preview of the stream. That's what I see when I'm streaming. Kauf. Amazing. Willem Kauf, amazing still life painter. There's a bunch of these here. Probably best not click through to any of these just in case. But you can see, you know, his approach to glass is very similar to what I was talking about last time when we did the coloured glass and the time before that, the wine glass. It's basically, it's more about what you don't paint. It's as much about what you don't paint as what you do. So that's what we're going to be trying to focus on, okay? Let's take this down. So we're going to try and create that over here. Let me tell you what I've got on the palette. So we've got pretty restricted number of paint colours today because there aren't that many colours that we need to get in this. My palette's rather wonky, isn't it? Could have set that up better. To be fair, Tansy, our little puppy, did run through here earlier on and bowled over my palette stand with all my stuff on it. She was very surprised. And I haven't put everything back the same as it was, obviously. Lead white. This is an Aralide yellow. This is Michael Harding Bright Yellow Lake, a bit like Hansa yellow. And then I've got green gold and transparent red oxide, which people who have watched these streams often will know I use these a lot together. Like if you have a bit of green gold and you add a smaller amount of transparent red oxide, you know, it gives you like a wide range of high chroma, low value colors from orange to green to yellow green. Really, really useful. When you want a bit of chroma in your shadows. The king of paint, or the queen, let's say, raw umber and ivory black. That's all I've got out. I don't think I'm going to need anything else. I mean, we'll see what happens, but I don't think I'm going to need anything else. I think that will probably do it. What do you all think? Is this going to be a nightmare to paint? Are we going to be able to find a way through? Yes, Kathy, a new sponge. I finally got some new sponges. And I've realised that if you wash them carefully with olive oil soap, they come up clean just like brushes. So, I think probably the best place to start is how I would normally do it. Thanks, Michelle and Kathy. We shall see. We shall see what happens. I'm going into this completely blind. I haven't done a Bob Ross and I haven't painted this first to make sure that I can do it. So I just don't know what's going to happen. But we're gonna try it and we're gonna see. I reckon as long as the values are good, it's going to work, right? It may be kind of an impressionistic version of cut glass, but it needs to feel like cut glass. So let's start getting some values in. I'm going to start mixing some paint up. So darkest values are like around here, around the shadow area. This is about as dark as you like, you know, it's really, really low value. I mean, everything over to the right-hand side here is like a really low value. That's raw umber. Some of it is going to be right down as low as the value as we can get. I put a little bit of transparent red oxide in that for some chroma. Like around here, we're going to be like basically lowest possible value. And look how dark that looks against the light panel, you know. Over this side, values are still very low in the background. You know, this is like a Dutch still life kind of painting, so we still want like about a value 3 over here. Raw umber. I'll put in a small amount of white to bring it up to a value 3. If you're using titanium, use a teeny tiny amount of white because it's much more powerful in the mix, and raw umber is generally weak. Which green gold do I like? I like Michael Harding. I've been using Michael Harding paint for a long time. I really like it. It's really good quality. I'm used to it. I know how it behaves in mixes. But I also, I believe that Williamsburg is good too. You'll have to forgive me. I might be clearing my throat a lot today because I've got a bit of a bug. I was playing violin this morning and it sounded really weird to me because my ears are blocked. Is this a value 3? Let's find out. Yeah. So over on this side, value 3. I'm just putting these daubs on so you can see, like, you know, that looks almost as dark as this, doesn't it, really? But that's pretty much what we want there. Over here, the shadow side of our tabletop, that also is a value 3. Just making some little kind of notes to show you kind of what values we're going to be using. I have a feeling I might need to bring up the exposure of the camera. Does it seem a bit dark to you, the camera on the easel? Oh, I know why. I forgot to turn one of my lights around. There we go. On the right hand side over here, we're like value maybe 6-ish, something like that. Probably has a little bit more chroma in places, but for the moment, let's just stick with some raw umber and some white up to about a value 6. 6 to 7. I've got a slightly gravelly voice, haven't I, today? I wonder if it's... I should go out of my way to to get slight cold bugs. It can be like a feature. I think, well, that's a 7. Probably a bit too light. Parts of it might be that high, but I don't think much of it is that high value. That's looking a little low chroma for me. I'll put some, oh, overdid it. I'll put some transparent red oxide in it. If it goes too orange, I'll put a tiny bit of green gold in it, put it back towards yellow. A little bit more chroma. Just a little bit. Not so bothered about the hue. There's a lot of different colours, obviously, in that tabletop there. So that's like about a value 6. So over here, we're about a value 6, you know, on our tabletop. And those are our main values for the background. So let's get a nice big brush and start putting them in. Dominic says I should drink a glass for my throat. I'm not sure it's going to help. I probably will have a glass of wine though, but not until I've finished trying to paint this. I think drinking some of this wine whilst I attempt to paint this glass would be a really bad idea. It's going to be difficult enough to focus on what I'm doing as it is without drinking the stuff as well. What should we get? Rosemary's Ivory size 10. Rosemary's Ivory flat. These are quite springy flats, almost as springy as a bristle brush. I quite like them because they give you a nice even covering. So I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to, so you can see the values as they go down. I'm going to paint around the glass. Let's do this one almost like a jigsaw puzzle. A bit like I did with the coloured glass, if anyone was here for last week's. Was it last week? I think it was. Cast shadow. Pretty much just raw umber here. You see, I always think, like, for me, the way I look at painting like this is, because I'm on a white panel, I want to see these values as quickly as possible. There is the middle, slight slope, more of a slope, bigger slope. Going over to a value 3 over here, I'm going to need to mix some more of that. So let's do that now. More raw umber. I had a feeling I'd be using a lot of raw umber today. The queen, I'm going to start calling raw umber the queen of paint. It is the single, to me, it's my single most used colour, apart from white. Helen says it's so exciting. It kind of is, actually, isn't it? But, you know, we've got to be calm, approach it calmly, step by step, get the values established first. You know you want to go, the bit you're all waiting for is the glass, right? I mean, it's the bit I'm waiting for too. If you're painting along, let me know if you're painting along, by the way. It's the glass you're looking forward to, isn't it? Either that or you've got the fear about the, you know, all those details in the cut glass. I've got a little bit of trepidation, let's say, and a bit of excitement as well, which is probably a good way to start with painting. You know, it's going to be an interesting challenge anyway. See, that looks too dark. Does that look too dark, right-hand side? 3 to a 4, let's say. I may be making a mistake here by changing this. Actually, that's quite nice. Lighten it up a little bit. Let's check the value. Let's say I'm going for a 4 now. That's about a value 4. I quite like that effect of pulling it off like that. Let's try to get this glass at least something like symmetrical. Nice to have a little bit of texture in there. Dark value here. But if I squint down, I can't really see any detail there. You know, if I'm looking at this across the room, I can't really see any detail there. So I'm not going to paint it. I think that 3 might be too dark. But here I'm going to paint. Actually, let's put it on with the palette knife here, see if we can get a bit more texture into it for the tabletop. I'm going a bit lighter. I've got no cloth to paint today, so that makes some things a little bit simpler in a way. Maybe going to go lighter here eventually. So I just basically, I mean, for areas like this, I want to get them covered as soon as possible. I don't want to worry about trying to get it to look perfect, because I know it's going to look entirely different once I actually get in there with painting the glass. So I just want to, really, I want a bit of texture and a bit of life, and I want to make sure that I've got the values right as a main thing. Too much chroma. We want like a A little bit lighter, maybe a 6 or a 7 here. Soft edge wants to be softer as it goes back into the shadow, because it's a cast shadow for a panel that you can't see just to the right of the painting. So I want that to be, I want this to be getting softer as it goes further to the right. Squish, squish. I'm going to get a soft brush, just sort that out a little bit. This is horrible at the moment, not at all symmetrical. There's the center line, there's the right. Let's measure that. Looks like one of Chardin's ellipses. Sacrilege saying that. You have a look at some of his ellipses though, I mean they're so dodgy. Beautiful paintings, I mean, you know. No doubt about that. I've got some weird colour in there. Picked up some green gold on this brush, that's a bit annoying. Got some extra green gold. Oh well. Is that ellipse-ish? Bottom up. Could be better, right? It's terrible. It's a terrible ellipse. Where is the center line? Come on, let's get this right. It's there. But the thing about glasses like this is that the base of the glass is usually the same width as the top of the glass, or very close to it, usually the same width. So actually I think it's too small there, so I'm going to wipe that back on the right hand side rather than making the left hand side smaller. Otherwise I'm going to be gradually disappearing the base of the glass and it will look like it's too small to stand up. So let's just make that like a couple of 1/8 of an inch wider, and we'll try and wipe out a slightly better ellipse. I don't want it to be, I don't want to spend forever on it because, you know, it's going to be incredibly dull, but I also don't want it to be like really out. I can sort out some of it in the painting later. And it'll look different, of course, when the values go on too. Let's live with that for a little while. Background, pretty much done, I think. Two in the morning in Melbourne, Australia. See, that's commitment. Hello, Anthony. Nice to see you. Anthony, have you got your painting yet? I forgot to email you the tracking number, but it's in the post from last week. I wonder if it's got to you yet. Hello, Irene. I'm glad it's Friday too. Guy, I'm very glad to see you here. First time ever on a live stream. That's very cool. Okay. So I'm going to start by painting in some of the darker values. I'm going to start with this area here. Let's see. I mean, this is the bit that matters, right? Everything else is kind of window dressing as long as we can get this bit to work. Hi Joy, good to see you. So again, I'm going to do the same thing. Like if I can't see it when I squint, I don't want to be troubled with it. Like I can't actually see. There is a line pretty much at the top of the glass there, but I can't really see it if I squint. But I can see one round here. But this is the background, basically the background that I can see through the glass. I'll leave that bit for now. And this actually comes down pretty much to and beyond the level of the top of the wine. Still very dark, like our dark value. I'm like value 2 here, probably something like that. When we get into the wine, I think there's a little bit more chroma. The value is about a 3. Good. And I want a little bit more chroma. Now just green gold will make it too yellow, I think. But it is definitely, it goes a little bit more yellow, so I'm going to temper it with a little bit of orange, a bit of the transparent red oxide. And I reckon I want to shape something like this. And these shapes will define the top of them. With that. Come round to about there. They look awfully dark, don't they? But I think they won't in a little while. I think they'll look about right in a little while. But slightly lighter on the other side. 4. So I'm trying to imagine the bottom of the ellipse of the surface of the wine here, to visualize it going round. So what I'm looking for, I'm squinting, like my life depends on it, which it pretty much does at the moment, and I am trying to simplify these values. I'm trying to simplify all of that complexity. This is the challenge of this particular subject to me. The interesting thing about it is, like, how much can I simplify it and have it still, you know, I'm looking for larger areas of value. Where can I paint a larger area of value and start to get the glass filled in? It's going to be a little while before it all starts to kind of merge together. I'm using the Chroma Magic app to double check my value guesses. Sometimes I'm right and sometimes I'm out by a step or so. The values are tricky on this, you know, it's got to be said. Tricky. So I want like a general value for this whole area here. It's an awkward one. So I want to paint this area with all those little crisscrosses of cut glass. I don't want to paint that. I really don't. It's difficult to judge at the moment because there's not much in there, but 7. Too much chroma probably. So my plan is to get some broad areas of value in, you know, rather than go in and try to make a detailed drawing of every little cross and highlight, and, you know, I would probably lose the will to live before I even got through putting it all together. Rather than trying to do that, I want to see how little I can paint and have it still hold together. Really low value, this is like the background here. I'm trying to leave that really thin little highlight down the side, just so I can see where that's going to be. And then we're a bit, so basically I've just got orange yellows, like, or yellow oranges, however you would prefer to put it. Slightly lighter, it goes over to the right. So actually, let's just take this all the way down. In fact, if I squint, I can hardly see this at all. What value did I have in my background there? I haven't been very good at keeping my values, my background colours together, because all the colours are so close. I've just kind of munged them. So this is a good little thing to remember. Like, if you've got a really thin highlight to do, it's easier to paint up to it than it is to paint the thing itself. Much easier. Actually, you know what? I am going to rough the base in. I'm going to rough it in. Because it's getting hard to see everything. Bit of a chroma drop there, maybe. Bit of black and white. So I'm trying to see kind of through the glass. Not to try to paint the glass itself, but to try to paint what I can see through the glass. Probably we should be using a smaller brush for this bit. Can't really see this edge, the back of the stem, so let's just paint over it. I'm actually drinking tea while I'm doing this. We're only half an hour in and most of the panel is covered. I think most of the values are looking about right at the moment, but it's still hard to judge because I've got to fill in these white areas before I can really see, you know, if it's going to work or not. It's interesting that I've left a little bit, that's an accident, but I've left a little bit of the white of the panel there, so we'll see. I'll leave that in, you know, as a little guide, like. Peach says, I love the background already. I can do too. I think it's looking quite nice. But it's only going to work if I don't destroy the glass. Irina says, that's right. I actually think that was the biggest discovery I had in the Louvre, that Chardin never bothered to carefully draw out his ellipses. I mean, some of them are just like, you know, they're really, really poorly drawn. But it just goes to show, you know, we obsess about things like that these days. Maybe they're not as important as we think. Chardin obviously didn't think they were particularly important. I'm just... This is too light and too chromatic now. I can see it now that I've got more in. I like it, but I have a feeling, you see, the colours in the glass are very slightly higher chroma where the wine is. Very, very slightly higher chroma than the background. So if I've got higher chroma in my background there, it might stop the wine looking like wine, and I might have to drop that chroma more in the background there. I'm just squinting and looking at it and trying to decide whether I feel I should or not. The painting hasn't come, Anthony. Okay, I'll chase it up and I'll get in touch with you about it. Jacqueline says, it's funny, my husband often wonders why I'm always squinting at our wine glasses at dinner. It's the painter's curse, walking around squinting at everything, and people are like, God, what's wrong with that person over there? Or squinting at someone while you're talking to them and trying to see, like, you know, where's the Terminator on their cheek? Yeah, chroma magic will really help you recalibrate. Dale says, I keep telling myself, trust the process, chroma magic is right, and sure enough it is. I think it's important to try and take that experience and take that kind of recalibration of your awareness of values into painting from life as soon as you can. I think as a tool, it's astonishingly useful, but all tools come with a danger that you can, to me anyway, this is how I look at it, they come with the danger that you can become dependent on them, and then there may come a point where it slows your development. Not saying that would definitely happen, but it may. So it's worth bearing in mind, and it's worth trying to make sure, like for a long time I would only ever work site size, and then I realized that it was limiting what I could paint. You know, site size places some pretty big restrictions on the way you work that can be quite frustrating to have to deal with. You know, there are some things you cannot paint site size. But it is really, really useful for learning some stuff about, you know, drawing accuracy and shape. And I'm distressed by my values here. They're kind of smoky and not as low as they should be in the background there, but we'll see how we go. Lynn says, I've been watching your videos all week and you've really inspired me to start painting. How cool is that? Thank you, Lynn. That's really nice to hear. Brilliant. Michelle says, if you want to stop using chroma magic, try being the developer. I'm starting to never want to see it again. Yeah. Essa Ariel says, I see very tiny highlights both sides of the stem of the glass. How can it be handled? And I can still see those just about when I squint. So the way I handle those is by so if I wanted one down here, we'll see when we get to that bit, but like I paint up to the edge with the background where it's going to be without actually painting over it. And I've actually just left a little bit of blank panel there with nothing in it. You know, it may not need any more than that. I mean, this is basically, I'm keying my highest value here, which is the white of the panel, you know. Let's start to connect up some of these value blocks. So my plan at the moment is to get as much of the main values in as possible, and then in a very loose way, and then to bring in the highest values, to bring some kind of modulation into those values to try to make them, you know, about where they need to be. This is definitely going much lighter over at the side here, so I'm just going to go like white here anyway, because it's going to go very light. I've still got a bit of paint on my brush, so it's not quite going in white anyway. So I'm attempting not to look, ooh, that was thick paint I put on there. I'm attempting not to look closely at the glass. And I'm attempting, like I'm only allowing myself to look at the reference photo on the other side of the room, in the hope that that will stop me trying to paint every little detail. Just to get all of these value blocks in first. This is a tricky one. Going to have to work fairly carefully. So if I can get the values of the main shapes right without destroying the drawing, then I can hopefully, so I'm trying to leave a little gap where the edge of this ellipse is, the surface of the wine. I can hopefully work back in bit by bit and paint like the minimum I need to paint. You know, I should hopefully be able to find a point where it begins to look like glass, and then I can say, right, how much further do I want to take this? Am I done, or do I think it should go further? Or so reducing everything down in a single area to one value as much as possible. That should be about a value 5, I think. Is it? A little bit light. I think the temptation with this is pretty strong to go lighter than the values really should be. I don't think anybody's painting along today. No one owned up. Is it too terrifying a subject? I'm not being unkind. It's a little bit for me as well. You know, to try and paint something so complex and try and do it without getting lost in the detail, it's a challenge. It is. I'm not going into it like feeling supremely confident that I'll be able to nail it by any means. I hope I will, obviously, but we'll have to wait and see. have a certain amount of faith that if I can get the values right most of the way through, that we'll be okay. So at the moment I'm looking for areas I haven't filled in yet and thinking what value should go in there. Squinting. Could not do this without squinting. I'm not sure I can do it with squinting. Bit dark, is that? Maybe. There's some interesting stuff going on in the highlight here, actually. There's actually some green, looks like a blue-green, like a rainbow almost. And that is interesting because I don't believe that they... I mean, I look at that and I think phthalo green, which of course they wouldn't have had in the 1600s, you know. I don't think they would have had any pigment that could do that, really. And would they see it? Do we only see what we're capable of seeing? So a little highlight there. It's more orange yellow than the green yellow that I've got out, so I'm going to put a little bit of transparent red oxide with some white and then add a small amount of yellow to it. Because the yellow I've got here is very green, so a little bit of transparent red oxide will send it more towards being a kind of a slightly more orange yellow. And I think there's a bit of chroma in there. So I've got a new brush out. This might be too much, but let's put it in and see. Pushed it a little bit, I think. So this highlight up here, the lighter part of it is, I think it's very close to neutral and it's like about a value 8. Chroma Magic is telling me it's an 8. There's a lot of detail in it, but I'm looking for a kind of a general colour that I can use for that whole area. I seem to have got a couple of horizontal lines across the surface of my painting. Did anyone see that happen? I'm not sure how I did that. Yeah, a little bit too light because there are some details that go into it. So we'll try to find more of a general value that will work there. And this is actually, the highlight here is on the back of the glass, but you can see it through the front of the glass. So the form of it is a curve like this, not the highlight is on the back of the glass and we're seeing it through the glass. To get that, I'm going to have to paint through the rim of the glass. Don't think there's a way around that. The chroma of the background is beginning to bother me. I think I'm going to have to bring that chroma there down. Get off. So the value there is like a 3 or a 4. So I'll use some black and some raw umber to get a lower chroma. Let's mix a 4 because the 3 was too low value. So I just want to bring the chroma right down that area of the background in order to, this part here I'm talking about where I've wiped it out, because I want the glass where the wine is to appear to have just a little bit more chroma. And when you kind of have like a thin glaze of a color like this, where I've wiped it back over a white ground, it tends to have a little bit more chroma. So it's brought the chroma of the background up to where I want the chroma of the wine in the glass to be. So I'm going to knock that back. Whilst trying to keep the value the same. A little bit dark, maybe a tiny bit too dark. Like I've got too much chroma there as well. I need some more white out. We're starting to, I feel like I'm starting to approach the point where the overall values are getting there. There's some bits I need to fill in on the glass still that are too high value, where I haven't painted anything yet. This has too much chroma here, I think. It should be closer to grey. The value I chose for there was a 6, right? A 6 or a 7. And anything I put on there now is going to mix with what's already there. So I'll put a close to neutral. I'll put closer to, like between a 6 and a 7, because I'm going to put some highlights in there later that will make it, that will bring the overall value up. So it seems like I'm going from the shadow up into the light, and a low chroma on this side and a higher chroma on that side. Sorry, I know I'm not keeping up with the comments at the moment. I'm having to... focus. Just darker down into this. I feel like that's getting closer now, but this value needs to come down, I think, a little bit over here. So the green gold lets me add a little bit of chroma in a kind of a yellow orange, and because it will be a little bit too green, the transparent red oxide, just a little bit of that lets me kind of pull it back, the hue, in hue terms, towards a yellow orange, which is what I really want there. Slowly does it. So what I think I'm finding is that a lot of the highlights that are not quite white are generally low, very low in chroma and close to neutral. I think I can start to refine some of these areas a bit more now. Definitely need to go darker in the glass. There, not dark enough. So I'm using flat synthetics because they give me hard edges where I need them, which is most of the time in here. I want hard edges almost all the way through. Whereas hog brushes would probably give me just like a little bit too much spread. Slowly getting to a point where most of it is getting filled in. This is kind of where I want to get to so I can see what I might want to edit and change. This whole area is too light. I think I've done what I was saying earlier on, where a lot of the values in the glass itself I've allowed to get a little bit too light. I've misjudged them a little bit too light, and it seems like the more I'm bringing them down, the more they look convincing to me. And I think one of the tricky things about this is doing it alla prima like this, not filling in a drawing, is trying to keep the ellipses right whilst you're focusing on something else, whilst you're focusing on the values, trying to make sure that the ellipses still work. because this ellipse needs to be thinner than this ellipse, which is then thinner than this ellipse, you know, because obviously they're in perspective. So as you go down, they get wider or taller is probably a better way to put it. So I'm starting to look at a slightly larger version of the reference photo now, trying to get things more in the right place. Now that it feels like the values are beginning to come. Oh, so going back to these highlights on the stem, what I'm doing now is I'm putting them in with lead white. You can't do this with titanium. But I don't know if you can see that, like if you pick up enough lead white, and it's good lead white, you get a kind of, we call it a rope, which you can then lay down, just drag it across the surface, and you get this really, really fine line, which you can then, you know, the paint is fairly thick still, standing up, so you can then go in there and adjust it a little bit if you want to. You can soften it or, you know, paint around it and up to the edge, which I'm going to do in a moment. So it's actually easier to get a finer edge on something if you paint up to it rather than painting the thing itself. So you can always paint like a highlight like that, wider than you want it to appear, and then paint up to the edge of it. Less obvious on that side. So what I'm trying to keep from doing is to try and go in and start painting any of the actual shapes of the glass, the little cuts into the glass. I want to leave those till right at the end, because like I'm always saying, if I don't get the overall feeling of the values right, if I don't get that part, there's no point doing the rest of it, because it will look badly painted. This whole area needs to be lower value here. I'm finding I'm definitely bringing values down a lot. Much more than I'm adjusting them up. So I'm pretty sure that I've gone in with them a little bit too high, just judging it by eye in a lot of places. So, you know, this line of the ellipse of the top of the wine here, I've just left it out, but it needs to be a lower value. It needs to be like, I'm going to use a neutral, like a value 7, but I'll do it as like a slightly extreme version to show you how you can do it. Like, say, I want it to be neat up to this area here, but it needs to be thin as well. But if I paint it in fairly thickly here, bear with me, I'll paint it in first. It will look wrong at the beginning. I've got to get the value and the colour right. This allows you to play a little bit and try and get the value and the colour right, because it's quite close to neutral. But it's definitely not white. It's a lower value than that. So I'm just trying to make sure I get one edge right, which is the top edge. And then I can work up into it with the values that I did have there before, the darker values, like here, to make it the width it needs to be, which is really thin. And it's easier to put it down and then paint it up to the edges than it is to try and do it as a line. And I think the edge that I've got over here is too hard. and the shape is wrong, but mostly the edge is too hard, so I'm just going to drag over that. This side wants to be quite hard. Lose an edge here. It is taking quite a bit of patience. It's taking longer to get to a point where it's starting to look like, you know, it's coming. I've got a drawing mistake here in my ellipse, which is throwing things out. Which is awkward because I wanted to get that in a stroke. So to be fair, painting cut glass is a lot more work than painting a normal glass, especially doing it, you know, kind of alla prima. This needs to come up a little bit. I think possibly even darker there. And the paint is building up pretty thick on there now. It's kind of nice though, because it means I can get better edges. Still not putting the highest values in. I want to save those until I'm actually getting the feeling of it. And then hopefully they'll just be like the last little bit that will make it spring out a little bit more. I'm going to have a breather in a minute and I'll catch up with the comments then. I need to have a stand back and check my values. They're starting to come though. The more I bring them down, the better it looks. The more I bring the values down. So I obviously ended up with them quite a way too high towards the beginning. Starting to get that kind of, a little bit of that glow. Some of the values in there are so low, a lot lower than I would think. This is going to sound like the most terrible excuse, but this ellipse is looking not too bad to me when I look at it on the painting. But it looks really weird on the stream, and there is a certain amount of camera distortion because I have to have the camera off to one side of me. I think it is a bit out. Gently does it pour. Just needed to sort this out. It was, when I put the neutral in, I think it went too close to neutral and it was just not sitting in the right kind of visual space. So now I've gone back in again with mostly raw umber and white, which is, if it's painted fairly opaquely, looks probably about the right chroma. But it's annoying to have to change it. It's tricky to have to change an area like that after you've painted like most of the object that's in front of it, because then everything has to somehow be made to still feel like it's in front of the background. This is just a dry brush. I'm getting to the point where I wanted to be, where it's starting to appear without any of the, to appear as a glass, you know, without any of the detail in yet. Okay, let's have a little stand back and a look, and I'll try and catch up with the comments. I think I've been so focused on this, I completely neglected to have a look if there's at the comments. But I'm fiddling a little bit more, you know, it's so hard to stop. This is white at the moment and it needs to be that kind of lower value, but I should really be doing that in a minute, not now. Oh, loads of comments. I'm really sorry. I didn't realise I'd been that focused on it for so long and hadn't kept up with things. Let me try and catch up a bit. Of course, I'm just looking at it now and trying very hard not to pick up a brush again. This is great. Kathy says, Chroma Magic has made a huge difference in my ability to judge a value and to mix to a value, even at higher chroma. I've been a fan since the get-go, but it still continues to surprise me. Yeah, I mean, as long as I've been working with Munsell and using it as a guide to check values, I mean, I first started doing that actually by hand, using chips, and then I realized I had to set up my light really, really carefully, so that would actually work. And in a sense, Chroma Magic kind of makes that process easier. And I did a lot of, I've probably shown you this before, but I'll show you it again because it's hanging around in the corner of the studio since we moved. I did a lot of value studies like this in chalk and charcoal, very carefully judging the values. And it brought it home to me how important really small changes in value can be, and how key values are really to everything. You can't overstate the importance of values. Joanne says, I find values are often darker than I think they are. Absolutely. In reality, they are very often a lot darker than you think they really are. That was one thing that I found a real eye-opener when I started, actually checking values. And I figured out a way to have an independent kind of verification of what the values I was seeing were. And I've seen it an awful lot in other people's paintings since then, when I'm teaching, and also just paintings that you see that people have done and posted. Very often, I think it's a very common thing, is what I'm trying to say, like judging values too light is a very, very common thing. You can breathe now, Marilyn. I think we're close enough. It's beginning to, if I squint down, the values are beginning to come. Hello, Laurie. Good to see you. Long time since we've spoken. How long have I been going now? An hour and a half? No, you're kidding me. Really? That felt like about half an hour, maybe 45 minutes tops. Just goes to show you how quickly time can go when you're focusing on something. But isn't that part of the joy of painting, is that you become so involved in what you're doing that time disappears. That's part of the draw for me. Part of the fascination for me is that it's like a world of focus that you go into. It's like anything that demands like a high level of focus. There's something really rewarding about it. I'm going to have a bit of a kind of a zoom in a bit more soon and start to put some of the details in, but I just want to make sure I've got the form working first and that my ellipses aren't too wild. It's quite a moody subject. I want to do some, before I start to bring some hard edges, I'm going to do some softening now before I bring some more hard edges in. Because it's not all hard edges, it's a mix of hard and soft. And I can't really do soft edges after I've done hard ones if they're all over the surface, so I kind of need to get the soft ones in first. And then work the hard ones over them. Oh, slipped. Sorry, I'm fiddling while I'm catching up with comments. And yes, it is tricky. I will not deny it. Now this is a difficult question to answer. David says it's coming together now, but I'm still not sure if it's a Pinot Grigio or a Sauvignon Blanc. Actually, I can't remember because I put it in the fridge, so I can have it with my pizza. I can't remember what it is. I haven't tasted it yet either. I'm trying to look at which bits I feel are working out all right. Ooh, which bits aren't. Also trying to think about the ellipses, if they need a bit of editing here and there. I need to sort out, this area here is really vague at the moment, but I just wanted to get the main values in, and it feels like it's coming that now. But it definitely needs some work. So I still haven't brought in my highest values. The highest value I've got on there is probably about an 8 at the moment. I'll have an experiment in a minute and bring in some of the very highest values, because I'm hoping that when I do that, see, then I can bring hard edges over the soft ones and it gives a really nice effect. Anyway, yes, I'm hoping when I start to bring in some of the harder edges, the higher values, sorry, it will start to feel more like it's the right kind of material, if you like. Uh-oh. Is that coming out on the mic? And now I realise that I've been painting a little bit longer than I thought, because tummy is starting to rumble, because it is, after all, pizza night. And tonight we have some wild mushrooms to go on it. Yum. Okay, not quite the highest value, but getting up there. We have a hard edge shape like value there. We have higher value over here. So I'm still working with the photo pretty small to try and get like the next level of value down, you know, without actually getting into the nitty-gritty of those values, like the nitty-gritty of the detail, I mean, sorry. I don't want to get lost, you know, that's the big danger here, is just getting lost in all of that complexity. I've got to try and keep gradually working down in levels of detail, if you like, from almost none to like a little bit more. And I'm at the little bit more stage, starting to bring in some harder edges. Just here and there. Well, I've got this up though, I can put in a couple of little bits in here. There's slightly more chroma in the highlights on the right hand side. I'm not actually sure why that is. I can see it. I don't have an explanation, a scientific explanation for why it's there, but I can see it there. So this is familiar from the one I did with the red wine, is that the highest highlights on the rim line up with the highlight on the side of the glass itself there. But even so, a lot of these highlights here, they're not quite these lighter values. They're still not my highest value. They're a little bit below. I'm like 8.5. Probably something like that. I'm bringing in some higher value and also hard edges. That's what's happening at the moment. Over what was previously mostly soft edges. Don't get lost in the detail. Don't. This ellipse is too deep. I brought this down too low. It needs to come up. And that's too light, so I'm going to have to go back in on that. Come on, be strong. Move the line. Soften this because it's too light now. A gentle softening is a really good way just to subtly drop the value of something. That was too dark. Ow. Well out. Ah. Oh, this is so tricky. Right. I'll bring some high value in. This is like the top of the value range now. Some little highlights where I think I'm going to need it. We've got a little bit here. We're going to bring a little. So these are like lead white ropes. I'm going to bring in a little bit of here. We've got a nice yellow one here. Oh, this is tricky. Whose idea was this to paint? No, I owe you actually, because I am enjoying it. Yes, it is tricky, but it's good to be challenged sometimes. Just, I'm trying to look for the little areas where I can put the hard edges in, and they're going to begin to bring that feeling of light out a little bit more. So another thing is, like, because I've got a highlight back here on the rim, I know there's a corresponding one on the opposite side. You always find that. More of a rope. I'm going to put down a rope, and then I'm going to cut it down, make it thinner here. See, that's kind of messy, but then I can work the background value around it. And the highlight on the inside, as long as I don't muck up the value. And make this really nice and thin. It's easier to paint round something than it is to paint the thing itself all in one go. It's easier to cut into something if you need a good line. This is a bit bright. I'm going to soften this back. Looks clumsy. This paint is so thick that the little white highlights I'm putting on now, it's actually standing up on the surface of the painting. Are we getting the feeling of glass now? Is it coming? Cut glass. I'm not trying to paint, you know, it's obviously it's a geometric pattern on the glass, which I'm not trying to paint. I'm just trying to bring out a couple of little bits here and there that are going to give the impression of it being there without actually painting it. Go on. Trying to find the right balance between the big detail in there. That suggests it without actually having to. Goat's hair. Oh, the hair came off. I think the shape of my glass is a bit weird, isn't it? I've bulged it out a bit too much. Do you think it's really ill-advised to try and change that at this point? It's probably ill-advised, right? I'm going to do it anyway. The actual glass is a bit more of an elegant shape than I've got. Mine is a little bloated. So here's my little bit of white that I left on the panel is actually a lot lighter than most of what's on the painting. There's very little of the detail on the glass gets anything like that light. Oh, something set the dog off. Tractor going by probably. So one of the things that turned out to be key that surprised me was making sure I had a low chroma here. I thought the background looked lovely when I wiped it out, and I think it probably would have worked and it would have been fine if I hadn't needed to show like the glass, the wine being wine, but still at a very low chroma. Yeah. Brushes down. I think it's time for pizza. I think we kind of got there. I'm really sorry that I've been so remiss with the comments today. It's just taken quite a lot of focus for me I can still see things that I need to change. You know what it's like. This value now is coming down too low. There's something there, higher value. It's like I tried to sort of bounce between detail and then looking back at the big picture again, because what happens a lot when you start to work in the detail is that the big picture of the value starts to disappear. And it's really, really easy to lose the painting at that point. And all of the work that you put in the beginning gets lost, you know, just by getting too involved in the detail and missing like the little things. Suddenly the value balance goes, or, you know, something like that. It's so easy for that to happen. And it really spoils it. Sonia, you're very welcome. I'm glad your Friday mornings are fun. It's evening time for me, of course. This is my Friday evening. This is a very tricky subject. I'm not going to lie, and I'm not going to tell you that you can make this really easy. I think that's not as true with, you know, the painting of the glass of red wine. With enough control and nailing the values, and if the drawing is reasonable, you could get away with that one. You could actually, by leaving a lot of stuff out, you could make it fairly simple. This, to paint in an alla prima painting like this, is not an easy subject. Even if you know what you're doing, it's not an easy subject. But it is a very rewarding one. And I kind of feel like it's something I'd like to do again. I would like to have a go at this again with another subject in. You know, I'm going to be looking out for cut glass to play with now. Oh, this edge wasn't there, was it? We painted across this edge, that's right. That's a suggested edge there. Still about the values. It's mostly about the values, and this one a little bit about the chroma as well. Lighter in background on the right. Who thinks the background should be lighter on the right? I think it should. Just a little bit. That's not really lighter, is it? A little bit. That's not the right. I mean the left, sorry. The background should be lighter on the left. A little bit. So dropping the chroma here really makes this, because this is still all really low chroma, but it really makes that work to start to feel like wine. Where I'm annoyed with myself is I've allowed the higher chroma to creep in here and here, and I think I could have had more of a feeling of the wine being a liquid in the glass if I'd been a little bit more careful about that. I kind of feel like I lost something there. That I shouldn't have chroma there. Yeah, the goat's hair brush. This brush comes out like once a year when I just want to do some really delicate softening, you know, without any brush strokes in it. It's almost like putting an airbrush over the thing. I use this very, very rarely, but it's such a beautiful brush. It's just like if I think things are looking a little bit hard and they need to be knocked back a little bit, like the tiniest amount, that's when this brush comes out. Like this edge, a little bit too hard, just gentle drag, and it will soften a little bit. You know, I think most of the hard edge needs to be this side. Maybe I should put a bit more, slightly harder edge. This has got too soft, maybe this side. Because what happens with glass, although the light is coming from the right, it travels through the glass and then it reflects or refracts, I'm not sure what the correct word is, off the other side. So ordinarily this would be a dark area of shadow, but with glass often it's the opposite. It will be slightly lighter on the opposite side. This is brilliant. Ellen says, I wouldn't have attempted a cut glass painting at all. And why I'm here, motivated to try now. Yeah, totally, have a go. I mean, I will tell you, though, it's a tricky old subject. I think this is the first time I've ever tried to paint cut glass. I'm pretty sure it is. And it's made me want to play with it a little bit more, because it is an interesting subject. I wonder if I can find any antique glass that, you know, I mean, it's partly the challenge, I suppose, the technical challenge, but it's also, it's kind of rewarding. It's a very rewarding thing to do. I actually have really beautiful plum that I was really this fell off our tree outside, and I thought this would be beautiful with this. I mean, the color scheme is so nice. It's got a little bit of that same yellow in there here. If you can imagine that somewhere on the ground next to the glass, and I'm actually really tempted to do that. And it's funny because I've been going much more down the road of like expressive flower paintings lately, but I'm really tempted to do some more of this, and also to see if I can better this one. Just spending a little bit more time on it. Okay, no, really, it's just brushes and paint, and you can totally get there with some practice. Thank you very much, everybody. I'm really glad you enjoyed the stream today. Next week, I don't know what we're going to be doing, and I need to have a look and see. But I have been, you know, it's very autumnal here in the Cotswolds now. The apples are falling off the tree in the orchard, and they are beautiful, and so are these plums, and it really makes me want to paint them. But the light in the orchard, especially early morning, the raking light, and the evening raking light in the orchard, makes me want to go out there and paint. And I'm really, really tempted to offer you all a workshop, an online workshop with the theme of a Cotswolds autumn, and for the first time ever, to include as part of it, for me, I mean, first time ever for me, to include a little landscape painting too. We shall see. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed yourself this evening. Thank you very much for coming. It was a particularly long one. Oh, Sarah says the little white spot at the top, it's a bit distracting. I know, but I left it there to show you that all the rest of the values here are lower than that. But Sarah, I don't want you to go away annoyed about something. So there we go. now it's gone. Okay. I'm off to see my family, pat my dog and my cat, and drink some wine. Thanks very much, everybody, for coming and being such good sports and sitting there and watch me painstakingly paint this. And I'll see you all again very soon. Bye for now.